זולטאי. אם הוא איננו, אז בבקשה להגיד לי. אני רק רוצה לראות אם הוא קיים את זה. כן. Your Excellency, the Speaker of the National Assembly of the Republic of Hungary, Mr. George Sabat. Your Excellency, the Israel Ambassador, Mr. Shlomo Marom. Chief Rabbi of Hungary, Dr. Alfred Schoner. Managing Director of the Jewish Community of Budapest, Mr. Alfred Schoner, Mr. Gustav Zoltai. Dr. Joseph Schweitzer, Director of the Rabbinical Seminar. Mr. Brosh, unfortunately, could not be with us. He's the representative of the Jewish Agency, but his wife is here with us, and she will bring greetings on behalf of the agency. Gina Monti, Chairman of British Wizo. Mrs. Veronica Reininger, Chairman of Wizo Budapest. Mrs. Michal Modai, Chairman of the World Wizo Executive. Mrs. Ruth Tekoa, Chairman of the Israel Wizo Federation and Vice Chairman of the World Wizo Executive. Dear President, Chairman, and delegates from England, France, Israel, Italy, Belgium, Luxembourg, Holland, Spain, Sweden, Venezuela, representing the whole Latin American continent, Denmark, Germany, Austria, Norway, our dear hosts from Budapest, and a special greeting to two ladies, our chairman from Prague, Dr. Vixova, and the representative from Romania, who arrived this morning, Mrs. Sabina Rosenberg from Oradea, Romania. I'm afraid I did not read out Austria, Norway, and Germany. I apologize. And Sweden, of course. Mistakes always happen, don't they, Mr. President? We are gathered here today to take part in an historic occasion, the opening of the first European Wizo Conference to be held in Budapest since the end of the Second World War. Recent events in Israel made me think to move this European conference to Jerusalem. For Israel needs the solidarity of the Jewish people. But we decided to hold it here in Budapest as this conference marks Wizo's return to Hungary after an absence of 55 years. The historic dimension is augmented by tremendous emotion arising out of Wizo's reappearance in the Hungarian Jewish community. I'm sure that everyone present here today is greatly moved by the significance of this conference at this time and in this place. For we belong to the generation which witnessed earth-shattering upheavals and events. The rise of Nazism and the subsequent horrors of the Holocaust, the overwhelming havoc and destruction of World War II, the spread of communism in Eastern Europe, the recent democratization in Eastern Europe countries, and the official end of the Cold War by signing the Charter of Paris by 34 countries at the Conference of Security and Cooperation in Europe on November 19th in Paris, which also marks the implementation of the Helsinki Final Act for Human Rights started in 1975 in Helsinki. I refer to this conference as an historic event. Let us therefore go back in time and take a short trip into history. Wizo Hungary was established in 1928 by Gizi Khan, Margit Ferenczi, Elisa Fleischmann, and Franziska Biselikis. Forgive me if I'm not correct in my Hungarian speaking. In 1931, Nadia Stein, a member of World Wizo Executive in London, came to Budapest and helped to reform the first Wizo Executive in Budapest. And in 1935, for the first and only time, A meeting of the World Wizo Executive was held in Budapest under the presidency of Rebecca Ziv, the founder of World Wizo. At that time, there were 2,400 Wizo members in 23 groups. They also worked for Keren Kayemet, for Keren Hayesod, and they published a journal and held seminars on Jewish and Zionist education. Wizo outfitted groups of children leaving for Palestine and prepared young girls for Hachshara, agricultural training life in Palestine, to which they hoped to emigrate. The Wizo organization developed into a very important factor in the life of the Jewish community until March 1944, when Hitler's hordes invaded Hungary. Deportation started immediately, followed by extermination and mass murder on a scale unprecedented in the annals of history. And at least 300,000 Hungarian Jews were wiped out. The story of the Holocaust, about which so much has already been written, about which so much has been spoken, need not be repeated by me here, but must never be forgotten. I would, however, like to quote a few phrases from a report made by Franziska Biselikis when she handed over the Hungarian Wizo flag to Rebecca Ziv in Tel Aviv in 1950. And I quote her: "I see the pitiful survivors who returned from deportation being met at railway stations by the fragmented remnants of Hungarian Wizo, who gave them food and water and advised and guided them about finding lodgings and starting their lives anew. Gradually, a few Wizo branches were recreated in Hungary with headquarters in Budapest. When the State of Israel was established in 1948, 500 Wizo members jubilantly and triumphantly celebrated the inception of Israel. Their jubilation and celebration were, however, premature and short-lived, for very soon all forms of Zionist activity were prohibited by the post-war administration here in this country. Franziska Biselikis describes the sorrowful reaction of Wizo members as follows: "I still see the tragic afternoon when we met to say goodbye to our organization. We wept bitterly at the crushing blow inflicted on us and finally rose to our feet and sang Hatikva." One woman, a Mrs. Sekeli, with tears running down her face, called out, "It cannot be that God has forsaken us. It cannot be that he has kept us alive only for sorrow. I believe that we will still enjoy days of happiness," unquote. Today, my friends, that day has come here in Budapest. The declaration of continued faith in Wizo, made by Hungarian Wizo in bringing its flag to Israel, has been vindicated by our presence here today, 40 years later, by bringing our Israeli flags to Budapest, to Wizo here in Hungary. In Wizo archives in Tel Aviv, there is an abundance of documents and correspondence. There is a letter from Wizo Tel Aviv to Wizo Budapest, dated July 20, 1938, about the possibility of sending certificates to enable girls to come to Palestine to study at Wizo vocational and agricultural schools. Wizo succeeded in acquiring a number of certificates for Germany, Austria, Czechoslovakia, Romania, and Poland, which literally saved the lives of their recipients, who were thus removed from the death clutches of the Holocaust. For Hungary, Wizo and Palestine managed to obtain only one precious certificate, and the selection of the girl for whom it would be used was left to the discretion of Wizo Budapest. The girl who was selected was none other than Hannah Senish. And I would like to read to you the letter which Hannah wrote in Hebrew to Hannah Meisel-Shochat, the principal of the Wizo School in Halal. "My name is Hannah Senish. My mother, Katerina Nezulsberger, is a widow of the late writer Bela Senish. I was born on the 17th of July, 1921 in Budapest. I am a Hungarian subject. Since 1931, I have been attending a high school for girls, and I expect to matriculate at the end of the present school year. My record of scholarship during all these years has been excellent. Even before our people's fate in my native country changed for the worse, it had been my heart's desire to go and live in Eretz Israel. And I resolved to learn a profession that would enable me to take an active part in the upbuilding of the homeland. To implement this decision, I began to learn Hebrew, which I'm still studying to perfect myself. And I hope that the language problem will present no difficulty for me. I beg, therefore, that my request be considered favorably. My admission to the school would cause me great joy and happiness, and I should regard it as a first step towards the attainment of the ultimate goal of my life. With cordial Zion greetings, signed Hannah Senish. My friends, a voice speaks to us from the past, the voice of Hannah Senish, who was 18 years old when she wrote that letter 51 years ago. We all know about Hannah Senish. The whole Jewish world knows her name and her story. After she graduating from Nahalal School, Hannah joined a group of youngsters being trained by the British to parachute behind Nazi lines. They were first parachuted into Yugoslavia. From there, they were to cross the border into Hungary. They were caught, and Hannah was imprisoned and tortured and shot by the Nazis on the day the Russians entered Budapest. One of the reasons for her execution was to prevent her telling the story of her torture. The Nazis even brought her mother to visit her in prison in the hope that she would persuade Hannah to give information. But Hannah Senish was adamant in her refusal to answer their questions and died a martyr's death. As a memorial to her courage and heroism, the Hannah Senish home was erected in Budapest, at which 60 girls at the time were trained to make Aliyah. In the post-war years, under the communist regime, the Jews of Eastern Europe became steadily and increasingly alienated from Judaism and the Jewish world, and especially from Zionist thought and practice. And that is the primary significance of this conference being held in Budapest. The re-establishment of Wizo in Budapest represents a reaffirmation by the Jewish women of Budapest of the Jewishness and identification with the State of Israel. This conference represents a declaration by Wizo of its faith and confidence in its newly reborn Hungarian Wizo Federation and a commitment of solidarity and support. We will help you in every possible way. We will help you to extend your influence among the entire Jewish community in Hungary. We will help you to disseminate Jewish and Zionist education so that you may bring Yiddishkeit into your homes and to the lives of your children. We will help you to strengthen your identification and links with the State of Israel, and hopefully into the not too distant future, some of you or your children will go to Israel and make it their home. The European Wizo Conference is always an event of great importance in the Wizo calendar. And this conference has acquired even greater importance by virtue of the time and place in which it is being held. I always appreciate the importance of the close ties which exist between Wizo federations, and I see this close relationship between our European federations as forming a Wizo European community, a WEC, towards the 1992 EEC, with common aims, mutual interests, and shared aspirations, but joined even more strongly together by the love and solidarity with Israel. I wish this European Wizo gathering a stimulating and dynamic conference. May your deliberations and decisions benefit not only the Jewish communities in Europe, but also, and equally important, the people in the State of Israel. Thank you very much. my British colleagues will ask themselves why, if I'm in the chair, I spoke for so long. So I hope you don't mind, because this is an historic conference where I had to give the historic background to you before you understand what it is all about. And now it is indeed my great honor and privilege, and an honor for all of us coming from Israel, coming from 15 countries, to introduce to you the Speaker of the National Assembly of the Republic of Hungary, Mr. György Szabad, an historian and a member of the Academy of Sciences. Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I am very pleased to welcome you in Budapest. I am sorry because my English is not so fluent, and therefore I will ask Ms. Eva Kovács to translate my following words, please.
Hölgyeim, nagy szeretettel üdvözlöm Önöket itt Budapesten, és mivel az angol, amit beszélek, talán nem elég gazdag, ezért szeretném megkérni Kovács Evát, hogy legyen szíves tolmácsolni a szavaimat.
Tisztelettel és szeretettel köszöntöm a Wizo szervezet európai konferenciáját, és azt a tényt, hogy ezt a konferenciát a hosszú időn át hallgatásba szorított magyar Wizo szervezet újjáalakulásával kapcsolták egybe.
I would like to extend a wholehearted and cordial welcome to the participants of this European Wizo conference, and I would also like to welcome on this occasion the fact that this event being held here has been connected with the reorganization of the Hungarian Wizo branch, Wizo organization, which over the last years has been forced to be silent.
Pálos Miklós államtitkár úrral, aki időközben megérkezett, azért jöttünk el az önök rendezvényére, hogy hangot adjunk annak. Magyarország örül annak, hogy az önök szervezete itt rendezi a konferenciáját, megtisztelőnek érzi ezt, és a néhány szó, amit elmondani szeretnék, ennek a tiszteletadásnak kíván kifejezője lenni.
Together with Mr. Miklós Pálos, Under-Secretary of State, we have come here this morning to join you because we would like to express that Hungary is happy with your presence here, is welcoming the event that you're having here at this moment in time. And in fact, this country feels honored that you have decided to have your important meeting here.
Mióta a magyar állam fennáll, immár 1000 esztendeje, mindig laktak Magyarországon zsidó vallásúak, mindig alakult jól vagy rosszul a zsidó sors Európában, Magyarországon is.
Ever since the existence of the state of Hungary for more than 1000 years, there have always been people, citizens of Jewish religion living in this country, at this land. And in fact, their destiny, their fate, sometime turned out to be better, sometimes it was quite unfortunate.
Ebben az országban a zsidóság részvétele az állam gazdasági, társadalmi és szellemi életében nagy jelentőségű volt, kitörölhetetlen nyomokat hagyott maga után, és szervesen beleépült a Magyarország egész múltjába.
The participation of the Jewry of this country in the economic, social and intellectual life was always of a very great significance of this country from its past. Of the National Assembly of Hungary, that it was in fact the Hungarian Parliament which acted as the first legislative organ in Central and Eastern Europe in the middle of the last century, in 1840, to make an attempt by which somewhat later, in 1849, the Hungarian parliament of that time declared the emancipation by legal terms.
Akkor az osztrák császári és az orosz cári hatalom elsöpörte ezt a vívmányt, és egy fél nemzedékkel később nem is olyan széles terjedelemben születhetett csak újjá. Az elnöknő által is felemlített óriási megrázkódtatás a magyarországi zsidóság nagy részét mártírsorsra juttatta.
After that, legal equality could be observed and enforced for hardly more than a century. And after that, there came the shock that has been mentioned, described in the speech of Madam President, by which also the vast majority of the Hungarian different countries of the world. There was another group of people to continue their life in this country, to remain Jew and Hungarian here at this land.
A második világháború utáni rövid, demokratikus periódusnak egy új diktatúra vetett véget. Egy új diktatúra, amelyik az egész országnak és benne a zsidóságnak is újabb tragédiáit készített elő.
The end of the Second World War was followed by a short period. The dictators, they had to suffer. And of course, those had to suffer as well who remained to be passive, and there were some who decided to become supporters and followers of that regime.
Kétszer fordult szembe Magyarország ezzel az új diktatúrával. 1905 zsidó áldozatai s voltak, akik a zsidóság köréből vállalták a demokrácia helyreállításáért folytatandó küzdelmet.
There were some Jewish victims among those for the re-establishment of democracy in this country.
Önök egy olyan országba látogattak most el, hogy megtartsák konferenciájukat, ahol a demokrácia erői felülkerekedtek, felülkerekedőben vannak.
You have come to a country, you visit a country at this time, and you have this conference, your meeting.
Tulajdonképpen a tárgyalásokon. Mindenek előtt az emberi, polgári és politikai jogok helyreállítását, másodszor a szabad választásokat. Semmilyen más előfeltétele nem volt.
As a matter of fact, there were only two conditions set forth by those representatives of the opposition who forced those acting as dictators in this country political rights, and the second main condition was to have free elections in this country. Hardly there was any other precondition set forth.
Ennek eredményeként önök egy olyan országba látogattak, ahol az emberi jogok, a jogek...
That is no discrimination enforced whatsoever concerning the enforcement of human rights, the equality of rights, equality of chances. That is no discrimination at all concerning the belonging to different denominations or descent or origin. And in fact, all these are laid down in the Constitution and are properly...
Alkotmány újjáformálása és a kiegészítő törvények e téren olyan egyértelműek, hogy az Európa Tanácsnak ezt a kérdést tüzetesen vizsgáló bizottsága azt állapította meg, hogy a jogi biztosítékokat a maximum
they could state firmly that all these rights have been granted in this country up to the possible maximum extent.
föltehetik ezután a kérdést, van-e antiszemitizmus Magyarországon? A demokrácia 8 hónapja történt vissza.
The benefit of the family and our Jewish people as well. When expressing with distinguished respect, affection and estimation my greetings to the Budapest meeting of Wizo and all the ladies present here, I take the opportunity to declare in a straight way, we all are participants of a historic event. We acknowledge and express our recognition for the undying work unfolded by this international feminine Jewish organization and make a deep bow before the talent and diligence by which the development of the State of Israel is being enhanced by them. When Wizo's Hungarian section has been founded, we were very optimistic. That is to say, if we wish to formulate more exactly, owing to the newly formed Wizo organization after a compulsory silence of many decades, a new and a bright color has been brought to our palette. I have a feeling, and I also know to be aware of the fact that Wizo's Hungarian section has been very noble objectives and is doing a good work. Dear guests, I wish to inform you that one of the most renowned writers of Hungary's jury has written a radio play with the title Great Women of the Bible, dealing with outstanding personalities who were rendered immortal by history. The audience has been allowed to get an inside view of a special inner world owned by Jewish women and had the chance of getting acquainted with mental beauty, generosity, great-heartedness, readiness to help and willingness to sacrifice. I am convinced that the leader delegates gathered here from the 4 poles of the world, and let me wish you a successful conference bringing favorable results to the benefit of the movement and to all of the world's jury. The blessing of God be upon the activity, all of you. Thank you very much for your attention.
Hogy a zsidó élet, a zsidó vallás és hagyomány, a zsidó szellemiség és kultúra ezután erősebb lesz minden rontó erőnél, és fennmarad, amíg a világ világ.
Following that, worldwide magnetic and powerful center has come into existence within human civilization that has put an end to the more thousand years of defenseless and intimidation of Jewry had been filled with, and as a consequence of that, the Jews may lead their life in a self-confident manner anywhere in the world, whether within communities or individually, following the Jewish mentality and spirituality, and thus Jewish religion and tradition will subsist forever.
A zsidóság tekintélyes hányada, fiatalok és idősek, férfiak és nők, a nép színevirága nem csak tekintetét fordítja reménységgel és bizakodással immáron független és virágzó országa felé, de egyre nagyobb számban vándorol oda, telepszik meg ősei földjén, és válik zsidóból a zsidó állam polgárává.
A substantial part of Jewry, the young and the aged, men and women, the very best of the Jews are looking upon the flourishing state of Israel not only inspired with hope and filled with confidence, but more and more of them are migrating to that country and settling down on the ancestral land, turning this way from Jewish individuals into Israeli citizens.
Korunk különös ellentmondása, hogy bármennyire tájékozódási pont, bármennyire is vonzás.
Are children of the Holocaust or the Holocaust children's children. Many of us have become crippled and have been taken ill during the years spent in forced labor camps. Most of us are going to bear the physical phases of the hits and blows, the tortures, hunger, and penury to a dying day. We'll never be able to get over the mental sores caused by professional extermination of our parents, children, brothers and sisters, relatives, friends, and their comrades in the sufferings, as well as by the tributaries and humiliations that we had to put up with. The sorrowful memory of the martyrdom and of all martyrs cannot be erased out of our mind from our heart either. Giving the warmth of Jewish collectivity, your organization is present in the homes for the aged, in orphanages, hospitals, and in schools. You are those who care for preserving and handing down the Jewish existence. Your presence is to guarantee that the Jewish family may be the shrine of love, tradition, and law, as well as the respect for life.
Csodálatos hivatás az önöké. Nagyszerű testöltő zsarnokságot legyűrve teremthessen a maga számára szabad és demokratikus létviszonyokat. A magyarországi zsidóság sokat szenvedett a 20. század vérzivataraiban, átélt világháborúkat, forradalmakat, amelyeket külhatalmak eltiportak, százezreket pusztított el közülünk a vészkorszak megszállott embertelensége, és a túlélők közül is százezreket üldözött el a Duna-Tisza közéből.
Now, in the capital of a country where after overcoming and defeating the long-lasting and destroying despotism, possibility is given now, but for a few months, to enable people to set up free and democratic circumstances of life. Hungary's Jewry has suffered a lot during the bloodsheds of the 20th century, surviving world wars, revolutions, occupation.
Ennek a megújuló hitközségi vezetésnek a nevében köszöntöm Önöket, fejezem ki nagyra becsülésemet áldozatos munkájukért, mondok köszönetet azért a támogatásért, amiben eddig is részesítettek bennünket, és amit vélhetőleg nem vonnak meg tőlünk a jövőben sem. Mint a Magyarországi Zsidó Felekezet vezetője, kívánok Önöknek sikeres, eredményes tanácskozást.
And now, before concluding, may I say a few words about the Hungarian Jewish community? In many decades. In the name of this renewing board of our community, may I take this opportunity to greet you most wholeheartedly and wish to express my appreciation for your blissful work, thanking for your countenance extended up us until now, until this present day time, and let us hope that you will be granting us the same assistance in the future.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm thanking for the greetings on behalf of the Jewish community. May you all live in peace, go from strength to strength, and your links with Israel may become also much, much stronger than they are, and maybe one day we'll see you. You know, we can't finish by saying, come on, Aliyah, but do come. I would like to ask now the representative of the Zionist group here in Hungary to bring short greetings, please. Mr. Jan.
Madam Chairman, Your Excellencies, Chief Rabbi, distinguished and honored guests, Wizo colleagues and friends. It is my very great pleasure to be speaking to you on behalf of the 11 European Wizo federations present today. This year, 1990, marks the centenary of the birth of a truly remarkable woman, Rebecca Seif, the founding leader of Wizo. In 1918, she, together with a distinguished group of young women, founded the Federation of Women Zionists of Great Britain and Ireland, British Wizo, and in 1920, World Wizo was born. British Wizo, as the very first federation, is frequently called the Mother Federation, and I am very much aware of the enormous honour bestowed upon us today in bringing these greetings, and I thank you too for allowing me to speak in English.
Try Hungarian.
I tried. It's impossible. It reminds me of My Fair Lady. I'm sure you've all seen My Fair Lady, where the young lady in it is, and she speaks Hungarian. Not me. I'm sorry. Maybe next time. I'm still struggling to learn Hebrew. What do you think? In May of this year, a magnificent luncheon attended by 500 people was chaired and organised by the Lady Seif of Brimpton, patron of British Wizo, in recognition of the centenary of the birth of Rebecca Seif in the City of London. We were deeply honoured that World Wizo President Mrs. Raya Yaglom attended and spoke most movingly about Rebecca Seif. Mrs. Yaglom presented a beautiful silver-covered Bible on behalf of Wizo to guest of honour, the then Prime Minister, Mrs. Margaret Thatcher. Both Lord and Lady Seif, who are unable to be here today, have asked me to express their sincere regrets at not being able to be present, and to express their warmest greetings and very best wishes to you, all of you, on this emotional and historic occasion. I would too like to convey similar sentiments from Dame Simone Prendergast, daughter of our beloved Elaine Blonde, life patron of British Wizo, who at the very last moment was unable to join us. Their thoughts are here with us in this room today. Rebecca Seif was, as indeed you all know very well, the first president of World Wizo. She brought her vision of a movement for women into being with her personal courage, her dynamism, and the Museum of the Diaspora in Tel Aviv. I would like to take this opportunity of congratulating you, Mrs. Yaglom, the World Wizo executive, and indeed all who were responsible for the exhibition. The grand opening ceremony held recently was, I have heard, without doubt, a most beautifully organised and elegant affair. My reason for saying it, moment in the history of our movement. We congratulate you too on the re-establishment of Wizo in Czechoslovakia, and we look forward very much to being together there in the not too distant future, and in Romania and everywhere else in Eastern Europe where once flourished Wizo. We hope to re-establish and be there in great strength. So much has happened in Europe, suppressed for so long, but always lurking just below the surface. It has come to the fore, with appalling acts of desecration having been perpetrated in Jewish cemeteries and synagogues. Jewish students at university in Great Britain are frequently on the receiving end of anti-hate ourselves and our families. We Wizo women bear a great responsibility. Jewish youth is our future, and it lies within our power. This afternoon, we plan to debate and discuss the function and future of Wizo in Europe. We will speak of the work of our own federations, of the need to increase our membership and our fundraising, and of the deep and loyal support we extend to our Wizo sisters in Israel, whose dedication and devotion fill us with admiration and pride. We will rejoice in the miracle at once again being in Hungary, in the spirit of our leader and founder, Rebecca Seif, whom I feel sure is with us in this room today. Thank you.
For your lovely address and for reminding us of the history of Rebecca Sieg, of the centenary, and of the importance of this conference here. Indeed, you are right. I'm sure that Rebecca Sieg's spirit is here today with us in this room. Thank you very much. Now, I would like to call on a lady whose husband couldn't come today. He's the representative of the Jewish Agency, Yosef Brosh, whom we met here when we created Wizo. And after that, Mrs. Brosh came here to help him with the immigration from the USSR. She's doing a tremendous job here, helping with the immigration, as they say, from plane to plane, bringing them here from Russia, sending them straight to Israel, and helping Wizo here too. So please, Mrs. Brosh, it's our pleasure to call on you.
Shalom, everybody. In the name of Jewish Agency Sochnut, I would like to greet you all in Budapest. I'm sorry my husband couldn't be here, but you know there is a lot to do. I am sure that everybody is aware of the task of Jewish Agency all over the world, and we are the same. We deal with Jewish and Zionist education, but our team in Budapest, I think, was lucky and privileged to deal with something that, to me, is one of the most important things that happened to Israel in the last 40 years. And this, as the ambassador and the other people mentioned before, is dealing with the Russian immigrants. As you know, they are coming here by 100 a day, and it's a lot of work. It's a tremendous organization with waiting for them, feeding them, transporting them, and so on. And few weeks after I came to Hungary, I was invited to a Wizo meeting. And at the first meeting, I said to my friends here that it's impossible that the Hungarian ladies, members of the Wizo, won't take part of what's happening in Budapest. And of course, from the first day I came there, even though we have a little language barrier problem, the women were ready to do anything, and by now I am sure that they've learned that it gives a big help to the Olim that are here 24 hours only, but it gives a big pleasure to those that are doing it. And this will probably be something they can tell to their grandchildren in the future. And I would like really to thank you very much to all the Hungarian chapter of Wizo, and looking forward to do more and more. Thank you.
I'm sure Mrs. Brosh must be a lady who belongs to Wizo because she is very short and to the point. Now, the big moment has come to listen to our chairman of Wizo, Budapest, Hungary, Veronika Reiniger, please.
Én a számos megjelent magyarországi vicóhölgyre való tekintettel úgy tartom helyesnek, hogy magyarul beszéljek, de igyekszem röviden.
Since there are a lot of Wizo ladies present here from Hungary, I think it is more appropriate if I speak in Hungarian language, but I'll try to cut it short.
Öröm és megtiszteltetés számomra a magyarországi Wizo elnöke számára, hogy a Wizo európai szervezeteinek konferenciája alkalmából Budapesten köszöntetek 120 aktív Wizo hölgyet.
It is an honor and privilege for me, the chairperson of the Hungarian Federation of Wizo, to have the opportunity of welcoming here 120 Wizo ladies on the occasion of the Budapest conference of the European Wizo organizations.
Természetesen sem a budapesti Wizo ma mintegy 100 regisztrált tagja, sem személy szerint én Egy pillanatig sem ringatjuk magunkat abban az illúzióban, hogy ezt a hagyományos konferenciát azért rendezik Budapesten, mert mi már olyan szenzációs eredményeket értünk volna el, amelyeket így akarnának honorálni.
Nor the approximately 100 registered members of the Budapest Wizo, neither I myself would entertain any illusions concerning the fact that this conventional conference of yours is being held now in Budapest because you would like to honor the extreme and spectacular results which we would have already attained.
Pontosan tudom, hogy a konferencia budapesti megszervezése a Wizo világszervezet gesztusa felénk, a nemzetközi Wizo mozgalom itteni megjelenésével újabb lökést akarnak adni a budapesti szervezet munkájának, ötleteket, gondolatokat, inspirációt kívánnak adni tapasztalatlanabb budapesti testvéreinek.
I'm exactly aware that the organization of this Wizo conference in Budapest is in fact a gesture of the Wizo World Federation towards us. And the appearance of representatives of the international Wizo movement here in this country, in Budapest, wishes to give a new impetus to our movement's activities, and you would like to share some of your ideas, some of your thoughts with us, and you would like to inspire us, who are your less experienced sisters in Budapest.
Szeretnék néhány szót szólni a budapesti Wizo tevékenységéről.
Now I would like to say a few words about the activities that have been taken up by the Budapest Wizo.
A gyorsuló magyarországi asszimiláció következtében az országban élő zsidók nagy része ma magyar zsidónak és nem magyarországi zsidónak érzi magát.
As a result of the ever-increasing process of assimilation in Hungary, the vast majority of Jews living in this country feel themselves to be Hungarian Jews and not Jews living in Hungary.
Generációk nőttek fel úgy, ezek közé tartozik az enyém is, hogy nem kaptak semmiféle zsidó nevelést, legfeljebb a családokon belül tartottuk meg az ünnepeket, keveset tudtunk arról, mi történik valójában Izraelben.
There are whole generations that have been grown up, and in fact my generation is one of those which have not had any particular Jewish education, and perhaps it was just in our family circles where we celebrated feasts and we didn't know too much about what was really going on in Israel.
Ennek figyelembevételével a magyarországi Wizo a mai magyarországi körülmények között építve a hagyományokra, de alkalmazkodva a jelenkor szabta követelményekhez, elsősorban olyan nőszervezetnek tekinti magát, amelynek fő célja a zsidó hagyományok ápolása, a zsidó identitástudat erősítése, a zsidó nép történetének megismerése, aktív részvétel gyermekeink, unokáink nevelésében, a magyarországi zsidó közösség építése, erősítése, együttműködés a többi magyarországi zsidó szervezettel.
In view of this fact, the Wizo in Hungary would like to be active under the present-day conditions of this country, yet it would like to build upon the traditions, and it would at the same time like to adopt and adjust itself to the current circumstances in this country. It regards itself to be primarily a women organization, which main objective is to take care of Jewish traditions, to strengthen Jewish identity, to disseminate information and knowledge about the history of the Jewish people, and to actively take part in the education and bringing up of our children and grandchildren, to contribute to building the Jewish community in Hungary, to strengthen that, and to cooperate with the other Jewish organizations active in this country.
Fontos feladatunk a széleskörű karitatív tevékenység folytatása, gondoskodás az arra rászorultakról, értelmezen a beteg öreg hitsorsosokat épp úgy, mint a Szovjetunióból Erec Izraelbe emigráló zsidókat.
We attach a great importance to our charitative activities, and we look after those who are in need of that. When saying this, I refer to elderly people and sick brothers and sisters of ours in Lviv, and also those who emigrate to Eretz Israel from the Soviet Union.
Az egyelőre csak Budapesten működő Wizo hetek óta izgalommal és szeretettel készül a konferenciára, Azok a társaim, akiknek még nem volt alkalmuk külföldi Wizo tagokkal találkozni, élénken érdeklődnek az iránt, hogyan él és működik a Wizo szerte a világban.
Wizo, which is active in Budapest only for the time being, in fact has prepared itself for this conference with a great excitement and with a feeling of affection. Those sisters of mine who have not yet had any opportunity to meet foreign Wizo members have been vividly interested and eager to know about the Wizo movement, and they would have liked to learn from me how people, women members of Wizo live and work all over in the world.
A kezdeti nehézségek ellenére él bennünk az elszántság és az akarat, hogy aktívabban és sikeresebben dolgozzunk. Munkánk akkor lesz eredményes, ha olyan új hagyományokat építünk, mellyel a magyarországi zsidó közösségek fejlődését és egyben a társadalom egészen fejlődését szolgáljuk.
Despite some difficulties of the beginning of our activities, we are persistent and we want to be ever increasingly active and successful in our work. I think that our contribution, our work will turn out to be successful if we are capable of building up new traditions by which we serve the development of the Hungarian Jewish communities, and by doing so we make a contribution and service to the development of the Hungarian society as a whole.
Mint a Wizo Európai Szervezetei Konferenciájának budapesti házigazdája, jó munkát kívánok, tartalmas megbeszéléseket és véleménycserét.
As a hostess to the Budapest conference of the European Wizo organizations, may I wish you a very pleasant and successful work here and very useful and rich exchange of views.
Bízom benne, hogy kölcsönösen sokat fogunk tanulni egymástól, és egyben hiszem és remélem, hogy alkalmuk lesz megismerni ezt a gyönyörű város, Budapest is. Érezzék jól magukat.
I do hope and trust that we can learn a lot from one another on a reciprocal basis. I believe and do hope that you will, while staying here, have a chance to become acquainted with this wonderful city of Budapest, and let me wish you to have a very pleasant stay here with us.
Köszönöm.
For coming, being with us, and giving us some of your time, and I hope we will still see you whilst we're here in Budapest. Il faut que je dise quelques mots à mes amis de France. Je vois qu'on souffre beaucoup. Les Françaises, les Belgiques, les Italiens, les Espagnols d'Espagne et tout ça, mais qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire? Vous avez voulu cette conférence, vous l'avez. Alors, il n'y a rien à faire. We have to wait for Dr. Zinger, our guest of honor, who is flying in this minute from New York, specially to address us. His plane is late, and according to the note I got, he will be here at 12:15. Now, I just have a proposal to make. If any one of you would like to add to the greetings or put some questions or anything, you're most welcome. You are here 15 federations. I'm sure that some of you would like also to add, let's say, something from South America, Latin America. How about Venezuela? So Anna, since you're the only one who represented the Latin American federations, please come up and just greet this conference. Anna Rotkov, President of Wizo Venezuela. Thank you to the ambassador, Mr. Maron, who also has to leave. You see, the gentlemen are all busy. We have to stay and work. So thank you for coming. Anna Rotkop is one of us. She's a Wizo president for the last 3 years. She has two former presidents here, Clara Slimak and Clara Schneiderman, from Venezuela, and I'm very happy that these three outstanding leaders have come here with her husband and Rotkop's husband to represent the Latin American Wizo Federation. So Anna, the floor is yours, please.
In what language?
Any language.
Somebody can translate me from Spanish?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah? No.
We translate you. No.
And I will try in English, it's not my language, but between Spanish and Hungarian, in Hebrew, and all the language, I will try to do my best. First of all, when we received Raya's letter, and when she invited us to come here to Budapest to the conference, and we spoke with both Claras and with Clara Schneiderman and Clara Schlimak and Giza Sankowski. After 2 minutes, we said yes. Like Gina Monti said to us, you said we was there. Excuse me? We was there. So we want to come back home and said for our children and our grandchildren, we was there. Thank you, Raya, for inviting us. And second, I want to thank our president in Budapest, because really we feel it's our first time in Budapest, and we feel, because of Wizo, we feel that we are in family, and you will feel the same in the future. We met every year. I'm speaking to you.
Yes, I listen.
We met every year, and for us, Wizo is a big, big family. Not only in our work, it's a big family because we feel we are all sisters. And I'm sure that in the future you will feel the same. And thank you all of you of the Budapest Haverot for inviting us. And we hope we'll meet in Israel in the next conferences. And we'll meet maybe someday in Venezuela. It's a nice country. You never know, you never know. We are a small community of 30,000 Jews, and we have in Venezuela maybe 100 Jews that are coming from Budapest in the years 56, 57. They're very, very good Jews in very good Wizo work.
Mr. Keller. Please come and sit down. Just the time. This is our chairman of British Wizo.
We just met in New York.
Israel.
Thank you very much.
Please. I have to let Israel Zinger because they're fed up with listening Hungarian and they can't hear it anymore. He'll see. How long do you want to speak?
As long as you want me to. You tell me how long.
Half an hour. You want to explain it, develop the whole thing because they've been here.
They want
Okay.
English or Hebrew?
English. They come from 15 countries.
Okay, gotcha.
Ladies and gentlemen, the big moment has come. Our guest of honor, who came specially from New York to address us, Dr. Israel Zinger, the Executive Secretary General, General Secretary of the World Jewish Congress, is with us here. We tell him Baruch haba. It's incredible to fly specially from New York to be with us and to address us. In a minute, I will tell you who your audience is, but I would also like to welcome again Leslie Keller, the World Jewish Congress representative in Eastern Europe, whom you saw last night. You could not oversee him because he looks well, Gott sei Dank. And I told you last night how instrumental he was to help us create Wizo in Budapest. And it is thanks to the World Jewish Congress, actually, that we started 9 months ago and that we are here today again. So Leslie, Mr. Keller, sorry, I cannot thank you enough. You really deserve all our gratitude from all these ladies coming from 15 countries today to Budapest. And I think you'll be very proud of the future of Wizo here in Budapest. Let me now introduce our guest speaker. There's a very long curriculum, but I think you have been sitting through long speeches, and I would like to make mine as short as possible, but I'd like to give credit to this outstanding personality, Dr. Israel Zinger. He's an unusual combination of academic, rabbi, civil rights, and anti-war activist. Dr. Zinger is an observant Jew who studies the Talmud every day and who's as much at home in Washington in corridors of power as he is in the world of the yeshiva. Dr. Singer became associated with the World Jewish Congress as a special consultant. In 1981, he was appointed to the position of executive director of the Congress. During the last years, Dr. Singer has visited almost every Jewish community. In December 91, he was received in Moscow by high Soviet officials, marking the first official visit to the country by a representative of a Jewish organization, the World Jewish Congress. He was instrumental in the release of the well-known prisoner of Zion, Yosef Mendelevich, in February 1982. Mr. Singer played a major role in the World Jewish Congress's diplomatic relations with Eastern European countries with regard to the immigration of Jews, as well as in the Waldheim affair. And you may ask yourself why we, Wizo, are so closely connected with the World Jewish Congress, and here I must just say a word of explanation. Because Israel, you have here 14 countries from Europe, Latin America, Venezuela only, and then you have a representative from Prague, Wizo, and a lady from Romania. The countries that you are struggling so much to get back into Jewish life and bring Jewish life back to them. Why we are connected with the World Jewish Congress is a very short story. I think we all have to know why we're affiliated to this great international Jewish organization. In 1964, when we visited as an official delegation to Russia, and when we came out from there, Dr. Goldman, Zichrono Levracha, invited me to the conference of the World Jewish Congress in Jerusalem, sitting then in July, to give a report of what we saw in Russia. And when I reported on the Jewish community that we saw then, the silent Jews, the frightened Jews, the Jews who were afraid to come and give us their names, who were afraid to come near us, Ruth Koa, whose husband was ambassador then in Moscow, and Ruth herself helped us tremendously to meet them, to go to the synagogue, to try to talk to them, although they were afraid of it. And I will never forget the help extended to us by Joe Tekoa and his wife Ruth, our friend. So when we came out and reported, the World Jewish Congress then, executive secretary was Dr. Rigner then, and he asked, wouldn't you like to join the World Jewish Congress? And I thought that's a wonderful idea, because only through the World Jewish Congress could we help the Jewish communities throughout the world in a political way, which we are not doing. But through the framework of the World Jewish Congress, our Wizo federations, who are 250,000 women in 50 countries, could be helpful to the World Jewish Congress in many ways if they need us. And so I called the late Rosa Ginosar, Zichrono Levracha, who was then the second president in Jerusalem, and told her that we had been invited to join the World Jewish Congress. And Rosa, in her very naive but dignified way, she said, what for? What do you need it? But after some conviction at the executive, we decided to join the World Jewish Congress. And I must tell you that since then, we feel that Wizo is a part of the struggling for all Jewish communities in difficulty or in despair sometimes, or like it we will hear in a minute in Eastern European countries and especially in Russia. But I must add one word. I have seen in the World Jewish Congress the late Nahum Goldman, Zichrono Levracha, and afterwards, later it was followed by Philip Klutznik. Never before did I see such a development of the World Jewish Congress as under the presidentship of Mr. Bronfman, Edgar Bronfman. Since the beginning, when we joined Wizo, the World Jewish Congress, I used to say at every meeting, why doesn't the World Jewish Congress undertake to fight for Soviet Jewry? And the answer was always, sha, 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 don't talk about it. This has to be kept quiet under the table. It's only the job of the Foreign Office. And there's a long story to it, but I can't go into it now. And every time we had a meeting, I used to bring up again the question, why doesn't the World Jewish Congress undertake to be the address for Soviet Jewry? And only when Mr. Bronfman became president of the World Jewish Congress and Dr. Singer started traveling to the USSR and the other European countries, it started moving. And I want to say, to pay credit to both of you together, you who were the forerunner. You went first to open the doors, Mr. Bronfman, who came later to negotiate. And it's thanks to you that we have such a big an aliyah and such a connection, a fantastic connection with the USSR, and such wonderful results which we see arriving now in Israel. This year, nearly 180 or 90,000 Soviet Jews. Israel, you have done a tremendous job, and being a religious Jew, you have done the mitzvah of your life. Thank you very much. Please.
Please stand. You don't mind if I stand?
No, of course not. I will tell them later.
How are you? It's good to see you. I'm not going to use the stand.
Israel, you can also speak from here. Whatever you
No problem. You're better off not seeing me the way I look after flying for most of the night and a good part of the day. I apologize for having arrived late, but we were fogged in halfway here at the transit point. We hope one day that there will be no transit points. We thank this country for the hospitality that it gives to those who use it as a transit point now. I would like to tell you in my beginning remarks, before I begin by responding to Raya and to Wizo and the connection between the World Jewish Congress and Wizo, that in last week's portion that we read, and Raya suggested that I am as at home in a yeshiva as I am in the corridors of power. Frankly, I was at home in a yeshiva before, so I'll begin with what I was at home with first. In last week's parsha, the portion of the week that we read, a woman, Leah, not Rachel, Leah, made the most important contribution to the Jewish people. She gave us our name. She named her fourth son Yehuda. And from this we became the Yehudim. She did more than that. We are told by our rabbis that the interpretation of what she did was critical to the personality of the Jewish people. She said, Hapam Odeh Lashem. This is the first time, the Talmud tells us, that anyone ever thanked God. Now, she had children before Yehuda, and there were other children. We all know that Noah thanked God after the flood that he stayed alive. We all know that Abraham thanked God after he came out of the burning cauldron, the first attempt at an individual Holocaust. Why does Leah get credit for having been the first person ever to thank God? There are many, many explanations for this, and the role of the woman is critical here, and I felt that I should begin with this. No one has ever thanked the way a woman can, and the woman has given the Jewish people the unique character which it has among the nations. Anachnu rachmanim baishanim v'gomlei chasadim. Ze hevdel bein ha'am ha'yehudi uvein ha'amim. We are different. We choose to be different. We are punished for our differences. And our differences are expressed in the way we express our own name. She said, Hapam Odeh Lashem. This time, when Yehuda was born, the man who would become the king, the leader of the Jewish people, I say thank you to you, God. He who will carry the name, and we all who will carry the name for generations to come, the Jewish people. These Jewish people will always carry within their name the word thank you. We are a people who don't just take things for granted. We are a unique people. We have been tortured, we have been killed, but we have also sometimes been favored. And when we are favored, our nature is to be thankful. That nature is our name. We are thankful by nature. It's hard for us sometimes to imagine this, those of us that come from so many countries where anti-Semitism is practiced, and even those of us that come from Israel sometimes don't know how to appreciate ourselves and each other. But we really are a thankful people, and we have much to be thankful for. And I'd like to begin my remarks by saying thank you to the government of Hungary for being the transit point, the first one, for the hundreds of thousands of Jews that will be coming and that are coming from the Soviet Union to be reunited in their natural homeland. Thank you very much. This is the duty of a Yehudi, and that's how a Yehudi should begin. We thank the government, we thank the Jewish people in Hungary, we thank the organizations that made this possible, and we thank all those that worked on all ends of this. This is our duty. This is our personality. This is the job of a Jew. More precisely, this is the job of a woman, because they thought of it first and they gave us our name. Wizo has chosen to hold its meeting here not just because Budapest is another city in Central Europe that has beautiful surroundings, wonderful castles, a beautiful opera house, an even nicer parliament than other cities in the neighboring vicinity. It has chosen to hold its meeting here, I'm sure, Raya, and I'm sure all the rest of the leadership, because precisely this reason and because of the opportunities that Budapest holds. We also thank you for the possibility that 100,000 Jews have the capacity to live here as Jews. And I'll deal with that subject later. So we begin with the good. And we will go to the realities. Because even though the quality of the Jewish people is to be thankful, it is also to be realistic given our history. And I'd like to begin by telling you that you have done the right thing to come here. There are many that take things for granted and believe that they will continue to happen because they are happening. Don't take anything for granted. Last year, when the flights almost stopped, and it's important to point this out, the World Jewish Congress intervened with the government and explained to the government the important role it would have as a nation which was in the process of democratizing itself, as a nation which had begun to show its humanitarian spirit, would be looked upon by the eyes of a world judging its democracy, and I might add, judging its democracy in comparison to its neighbors, in the manner that it would deal with this important problem. And I might say, with credit to the government of Hungary, they understood the problem, and they went back to remain the main transit point for Jews from the Soviet Union. There was backsliding, and that did not occur by accident. Don't make the mistake of thinking that your being here today does not continue to encourage that government to make its right decisions. We must continue to come here. We must continue to come to Britain to remind the new Prime Minister of what his duties are. We must continue to go to France to remind that old Prime Minister what his duties are. We must continue to go to the United States to remind that President and his Foreign Minister what their duties are, because we've got troubles everywhere. But I'd like to tell you that we will be heard in every quarter, and we will be listened to when we speak. We will not be heard when our policies will be those policies of silent diplomacy. And here I begin by saying thank you to Wizo. The World Jewish Congress for a while believed that a philosophical politics that would work would be a policy of silent diplomacy. Silent diplomacy is no diplomacy. Quiet diplomacy should not be mistaken for silent diplomacy. We were forced to be free, to quote Hegel, who's not so much in style here any longer, but he's still a great philosopher. Hegel said you cannot be free alone, you must be forced to be free. The World Jewish Congress leadership before my time believed that if you whispered things in the ears of governments, those governments would be appreciative and would do what you asked them. It didn't work in 1938. And it didn't work during the 40 years of communist rule. Jews were not killed, to be sure, during those 40 years as Jews, but they certainly did not flourish the way they might. And only when we started speaking clearly with a clarion voice and began using that power which we possess, which you possess as 250,000 women, did the whole become greater than the sum of its parts. And the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. If you wonder why you joined the World Jewish Congress, or you wonder why 14 countries make up 250,000 women represented by these 130 or 150 people here, you are stronger than your numbers, because in mathematics, we have a principle that doesn't arithmetically hold. You are greater than your numbers. Your voice is more important than you are. The influence in the countries in which you live adds far more than the numbers which, if taken separately, you will add up to. We have 70 communities affiliated with the World Jewish Congress. We have organizations like Wizo, not as numerous, of course, not as powerful, not as cohesive, not as regimented, not as loyal, not as capable, and not as effective. But added together, we are far more than those 38 organizations in America affiliated with the American section and the 70 communities. We would, of course, all be nothing, as we were in 1936 when the World Jewish Congress was founded to protect the Jewish world from the oncoming Holocaust, and failed. We failed because there was no state of Israel. And I would like to tell you very clearly that although we speak with a clarion voice today, and we moved from what was called silent diplomacy to quiet diplomacy in conjunction with public action, and I thank your President and yourselves for giving us the courage to be this way, and for giving me the support to change the policies of the World Jewish Congress from their previous policies, and I say this with courage that you gave me. We would none of us have this courage without the existence of the state. The state of Israel qualitatively changed the existence of every Jew, no matter where he or she lives. Whether they live in Israel, in the United States, under a communist regime in Hungary, or under a free regime under which democracy today reigns. Under a regime in which glasnost reigns in the Soviet Union, or under the era of stagnation in the Soviet Union. If there were no state of Israel, we would all still be negotiating as to whether we should be having quiet diplomacy or silent diplomacy. We would all still not be sure whether we should send airplanes into Entebbe to rescue our hostages, as we didn't have the capacity to do in Auschwitz. I recall when the representative of Wizo was sitting together with me at the United Nations. Evelyn, are you here? No. All right. Evelyn Sommer sat with me as the only two Jewish representatives with consultative status at the United Nations during the Entebbe crisis. And we were the lone Jews outside of the Israeli ambassador. And we heard the ugly remarks of a representative of a then socialist country, a neighboring country, who said that Israel committed crimes that are unspeakable because it invaded the sovereign territory of a member nation of the United Nations. And the ambassador of Israel at that time, in one of his finest moments, probably his finest moment in his life, the President of the State of Israel, responded by saying to the entire assembled body and to the peoples all over the world that were interested in listening to him, and to the Jewish world, that had Israel had the opportunity to invade your country, Mr. Ambassador, during World War II, we would have done so, and far, far fewer Jews would have died on your soil, Mr. Ambassador. That very same place today, Judenrein, still has anti-Semitism in it. And that very same place has a disease which could become contagious to other countries around it. That very same place has unabashed anti-Semitism being spouted by people running for high office in that country and should not be followed by anyone, communist or democratically elected. We shall not permit such crimes to be repeated. And we have the guts to say this because our lives are different today because we have a state. A door closed to any person, as it was to my parents during World War II, which found no place that would let them in despite their doctorates, despite the funds they had, because no country had room for these two people and for the 113 immediate members of my family who perished. Would have been different had there been one place that had room for them. And you all know the principle. If there is a country which has room for you, every country has room for you. If there is no country that has room for you, then no place has room for you. America thinks that it allows 40,000 Jews to arrive to America's shores from Russia today, and is doing so out of the goodness of his heart. It's doing so only because the state of Israel takes 200,000 Jews in, and America is embarrassed by this. There would be no Jews. There would be numerus clausus for immigrants from the Soviet Union. They would be allowing 800 Jews to come in because that's a number which would be manageable during a recession in the United States. Make no mistake about that. The 180,000 Jews would have nowhere to go if they would have no Israel. The British would still not be allowing us in. And that is what happened today. Why do I tell you this? Because the Women's International Zionist Organization struggled to establish a state together with the World Jewish Congress and with the Zionist movement. And that is what ties us all together. Not only our Jewishness and our Jewish faith. And when I made this speech in Budapest, almost the same speech, and Mr. Keller may remember, and some of you who were here may remember this, at a time which it was less easy to make this speech, there were people who were horrified, people who were frightened. It was during the 40th anniversary of the deportation. It was quite a while ago, when times weren't as easy. I want to tell you that I was almost sacked. And you want to know something? It would have been my pleasure, because I don't need this job. Nevertheless, I would like you to know that there were ministers of the government sitting there, your predecessor, who used the good judgment of making believe he didn't hear what I said. And the person who was listening to my presentation was not happy, but didn't need to translate it because most of the people were foreigners and were themselves aghast that this was taking place. They thought there would be a pogrom. There were no pogroms. I would like to tell you that the procedure of glasnost didn't come overnight. Walls didn't come tumbling down just because Gorbachev decided they would. He is a historic figure. He deserves a Nobel Prize. He is a man with courage. He is one of the only leaders in our world today, particularly with Maggie Thatcher going back home, and I'm sorry, ladies, that there are fewer women with courage like that around. But I tell you, that it didn't happen overnight. He too was forced to be free. He was forced to be free by a system of accretion that occurred slowly. He was forced to be free by people who continued to come and pound at his doorstep and tell him, you shall never require MFN from Western countries. You shall never trade as a normal nation. You shall never become a member of the family of nations that shall be like other nations unless you treat Jews differently than you treat them now. Unless you treat Jews to be reunited with their families and allow them to go back to their homeland. Because that message was given to him again and again and again and again, and he knew that he would have to treat Jews differently. Did this, when glasnost eventually occurred, did he know what to do? And did we reap the benefits? And shall we continue to reap the benefits? But don't make the mistake of letting up. Don't make the mistake of forgetting the message. Don't make the mistake of continuing to thank and continuing to ask. Because only he who asks, or she who asks, sometimes more effectively, as well as thanks, receives. I've not come here to harangue you. I've come here to describe a history of an organization which I am associated with, and particularly the approach to the Eastern countries. For those of you who believe that glasnost is over and done with, and that democracy is here to stay, and that we can now relax. Let me tell you that I am a glasnostic. Let me tell you that I don't believe, I only observe critically. I watch the electoral processes in some of the countries around this country and watch them here, and watch them with trepidation for the people that live here that aren't Jews, as well as for the persons who live here still that are Jews. All of democracy is an experiment. Demokratia mish'al am yom yomi. Democracy is a daily test, tested each day, and it's even more poorly translated in English. It sounds better in Hebrew, one of the few phrases of modern Hebrew that are actually more beautiful than the English phrase from which it was taken. It's a daily test, and it's a test which is being tested right now. It's being tested economically. If this country succeeds economically and the West understands that it must help succeed economically, then democracy will be more effective, and this country will continue to be a transit point, and Jews will continue to be able to live if they choose to remain here. And if it doesn't, we shall unfortunately be watchful and continue to make the people here who want to remain democratic watchful of the fact that they do not have backsliding towards the kinds of right-wing anti-Semitism that existed before there was left-wing anti-Zionism. And I trust that you remember that that was even uglier. The dangers that exist in this part of the world, in a democracy that is 1 year old, are dangers which we must be vigilant about. And your visit here is not only one of thankfulness, but one of vigilance, one of concern, and one of contact. The more of you that come to visit, the more of you that have contact with those who remain and those who leave and those who transit, the more important you will be, and your compatriots and your co-religionists will be here. It is not for me to decide that there is such a thing as Gola or Tfutzot. I have my own view. My view is that all those of us who do not live in Israel live in the Gola. That is my view. I am a Zionist. But not everyone has to be a Zionist who is a Jew. I think ultimately they will be. But in the meantime, I believe that those of us who live in the Gola, and there is a distinction between those who believe they live in the diaspora, they're fooling themselves, and those who live in what I call dispersion. We are dispersed. It is a negative context as opposed to a positive context. Americans believe they are, for instance, living in a diaspora. They're Babylonian Jews. They forget that all of a sudden somehow Babylonia became Iraq, and that Saddam Hussein is now the president of Babylonia. They forget. One must remind people of such things. One must forget that the golden age of Spain ended in the Inquisition, and Queen Isabella is suddenly being beatified by the Catholic Church for her efforts in the Inquisition. One must remind people of such things, particularly the Catholic Church. Those are activities which the World Jewish Congress is continuously active in. So in case you think we only deal with Eastern Europe, you should know that we're vigilant in other areas too. One must remind the Pope that the Catholic Church does not have full relations with Israel. One must remind the United Nations that that stain and the World International Women's Zionist Organization, together with the World Jewish Congress, Wizo, are the lobbyists from the day that resolution was passed in infamy. And again, I sat together with Evelyn as the only representative that night. We were sitting there and we couldn't believe what was happening, and we couldn't stop it either. Have sought to change that history and will succeed. We're working on it country by country, president by president. And when we go to see the president of this country, we'll remind him again today. And I'm sure that your president will do so. And every one of your local presidents and every one of your regions will tell their presidents that this cannot be done. The president of the World Jewish Congress has been instructed by his executive not to visit any country, no matter what political system exists. And not forget to tell him that Zionism is racism is a scandal, is a stain on every Jew, be he a Zionist or she a Zionist already or in the process of becoming one. Because to insult the Jewish people by calling Zionism as racism is something which insults us all in a corporate manner. We shall have that repealed in our lifetime and maybe even before that. If the wall can fall down around Berlin, some of these countries can realize that we aren't racists. We are the only country in Israel that has had an election in that part of the world to which glasnost has not yet come. There is no glasnost in the Middle East except in Israel. It is 4,000 years of no election in the Middle East except in one place in which there were 12 elections democratically elected. Whether you like the government or not, and it's your choice. You can like a different government, go there and vote for it. But it's the only place in which that happens in that entire part of the world. The US government can know, and we tell it to them, that all of their newfound allies haven't had a democratic election yet and wouldn't know one if they met it in the street. That those are temporary allies. That these alliances cannot be allowed to continue to insult the one country in which democracy does reign, even if you disagree with some of the policies of that country. Racism is an ugly term which should be reserved for racists. And I know what racism is because I was arrested fighting racism in the United States, not only for Jewish causes, and here I raise another point. The concept of amen ani li mili v'chashani la'atzmi ma'ani is a concept that the World Jewish Congress does believe in, and that Wizo does believe in. We raise our voices for others as well. We raised our voices for democracy, and we raise our voices for democracy here too. We made it clear when we came to this country, when there was a regime which we did not find completely to our liking, that what was going on here was not exactly what we wanted, even though we found some of those people more acceptable than their predecessors. And we did. And we shall raise our voices if we find something in these countries unacceptable to the non-Jewish citizens that we don't find acceptable either. We shall do this here. We shall do this in Argentina, we shall do this in South Africa, and we shall do this everywhere because a door which is closed to any man is closed to a Jew first. And we are human rights organizations. And that's why we have consultative status, and you have consultative status, and that brings us together at the United Nations and at all the consultative bodies. And the more intelligently we speak, the more capable we are as a lobby for the Jewish people in all the arguments we make for ourselves. When we went to the Soviet Union and asked them to free prisoners of Zion, as we refer to them, and they didn't like to hear that term, they understood what we were saying because we also asked for the freedom of persons being held in South Africa. At the United Nations human rights meetings. Because we, together with Wizo, nominated Helen Sussman for the Human Rights Award at the United Nations, and she acquired it only because the Jewish organizations supported her at first. No one remembers these things. No one wants to remember these things because today to be against apartheid is not such a big mitzvah. But the point is, 15 years ago it was a big mitzvah, and we were the only ones who had the courage to say it and to do it. And I'd like to remind you of your own history and of ours, and it's intermingled and intermeshed. And it's an old history, because before I began working with the World Jewish Congress after I was elected, together with Raya as Secretary General in the last assembly, I would like to point out to you that I was just a lowly advisor on international affairs and the honorary representative to the United Nations, which was a job that nobody else wanted because nobody wanted to sit in that cesspool. But I'd like to tell you that somebody has to sit there too, and somebody has to speak up there too, and you have to sit in little ugly committees, and you have to listen to the Iraqi representative oppose the representation of Wizo because it has Zionist in its name. And you have to sit there and listen to this guy asking the World Jewish Congress whether it will continue to support the opposition of Zionism as racism, and we have to say yes. And we have to be embarrassed by another Jewish organization which will come there and try to sneak its way through by saying no. And we have to listen to this. And we should be exposing them, but ultimately, I guess, they too will see the light and understand that you can remain an organization with consultative status at the United Nations by telling the truth. I would like to tell you that we have a history that is common, but we also have a future. that is coming. And if all you've been hearing about is what we've done and what you've done, let me tell you that there's a lot more to do. I discussed the subject of anti-Semitism in the new democracies, but I haven't discussed the subjects of the changing world. We've been lulled into a sense of complacency in the West. And I speak freely wherever I come. This is not to make Hungarians or Hungarian government officials feel comfortable about allowing any anti-Semitism, because you are being eyed with scrutiny. That's more careful since you're new. Just look at Israel after 40 years and the scrutiny it is eyed with after 42 years, unnecessarily so. Israel is held up to a standard that no country is held up to. Everybody's quick to hold Israel up to the highest standard and demands of Israel the highest standards Israel demands of itself. You don't see the Brits holding themselves up to that standard with regard to the way it deals with Ireland. You don't see the French holding themselves up to that standard with regard to the way they behaved in Africa and continue to do so. You don't see the United States holding themselves up to that standard during the war in Vietnam or during the way it continued to behave in its own country with regard to blacks and continues to do so even now. The argument is that Israel has occupied territory. So does everybody else. The only difference is that it's easier to beat up on Jews because they think we're fewer in number. But we aren't. Not if we're intelligent and we're effective. And we have to become more effective. We've become lazy, slothful, tired, and rich. Vayishman Yeshurun Vayivat. I would like to tell you right now that this has nothing to do with physical attributes. It has to do with the kind of wealth that many of us live in and many of us choose to live in. Even in the East. The great revolutions of the East are talking about a market economy. That's the goal. They want to be like us. Let me tell you, I have seen the future, Mr. Minister, and it ain't good. I have seen what the market economy alone brings, and it's not enough. Not even for Jews who have become assimilated to those countries. We've become comfortable and satisfied and don't struggle any longer. There were some aspects to the previous system which we should at least learn to copy the verbiage of. The concept of the struggle, the concept of the need for change, as opposed to the need just for economic success. It's critical to eat, but not critical to eat all day. It's critical to be well-to-do as a country and not owe. It's critical not to have an inflation rate of 35%, but it's not critical to sell yourself down the river for that and all your ideals with it. The Jewish communities in the countries in which they live stood for things and still stand for things, but should begin to tell their children that the way their parents fought for the existence of the state and fought for the freedom of Soviet Jews should continue to fight to establish and to fortify the kinds of efforts we used to get those achievements and to make sure that they continue. We cannot be Republican Jews in the United States and be afraid to criticize our president. We cannot be a Jewish community that comes in on the coattails of Republican Jews, because then we behave like Hofjuden. That is not our way. That was not our way in the Soviet Union, where we were endangered when we did it, when we went there, when it was no honeymoon to go. When we were beaten in the streets, when it was a great victory to carry in one Jewish book, when we were running an underground railroad. Today, when it's possible, have we become satisfied, and will we be satisfied just to say that we shall raise another $300 million this year and know that that is satisfactory? First of all, it's not. And second of all, it's not enough. I've told my children that those who have not yet mortgaged their second car so that every Israeli will have a bicycle are not doing their part. now behaving the same way as American Jews did during World War II, and not having fought for more quotas, and not having created more visas, and not having arranged for more affidavits so that the rest of the family died. That responsibility is theirs and ours. And if our children won't learn to do something other than look for success, the success of the 90s and the complacencies of the 80s and the lackadaisical behavior of the 70s, and not have any of the guts of the 60s that was translated into fighting for Soviet Jews and trying to fight for the kind of struggle that established and created a unique state in the state of Israel, we shall lose the advantages that we acquired. Tell your kids that if they don't become members of Wizo and don't remain activists, that you shall have wasted your lives and they will waste theirs, not only as Jews but as human beings. Whether they live in Israel, although they serve in the army there and do that, but whether they live in Israel, they have to have an ideological orientation to what they do, not just a physical one, or whether they live in the diaspora. The time has come for a reassessment, and that can only occur through leadership. And we live in an age without leaders. And I feel there's an obligation to tell this to you because I'm not talking to you. Present company is always excluded. Always. And in this room particularly. But I'd like to tell you that we live in an age without leaders everywhere, and they become fewer every day. They become fewer every day because they're rejected by the men in gray suits. They are frightened of leaders here in Britain, in the United States, and therefore people try to muddle through. There were times when people stood up for what they believed, were arrested for what they believed, endangered their lives for what they believed in, and their children had role models as to how to behave. Part of what's happening to us and to our children is that they're looking at us and our neighbors, and it's on our heads, and the blood is on our hands. Let me conclude by telling you that this week's portion deals with a struggle, the historic struggle of the Jewish people. It deals between the struggle between Yaakov and Esav. It deals with a struggle that took all night, and I had all night to think about it. Because they kept turning the lights on and off in the plane, on and off, so that they would make sure that I didn't have any sleep. And I'd like to tell you that I thought of it because I spent the time studying the Daf Yomi as well as the Parshat HaShavua. And Yisrael, myself, it's my name, but it's the Jewish people, acquired his name because he spent his whole night struggling with the Sar Shel Esav. What was he doing? Ki sarisa im Elokim v'im anashim v'tuchal. He was fighting with God and with man. And he vanquished them both. Now, I don't know how you vanquish God. I don't even know how you struggle with God, but there must be something to this, and it must be something that people should do. Sometimes we don't even do that. We don't even care. We don't care about God. We don't care about his laws. We don't care about whether we like them or not. We don't even struggle about that. We just accept everything. And when you begin to accept everything, you accept nothing. You've got to fight and struggle with everything, with your laws, with whether they're correct, with whether they're just, with whether they're right. And when you fight with them, you'll come to a just conclusion about them, as long as you're interested in them. And when you fight with men, even if they're your brothers, about the truth, you will succeed. Wizo succeeded in getting a vice president that's a woman in the World Jewish Congress. It was no mean achievement. I'd like to tell you that I watched it happen, and I'm happy it didn't happen to me. But I'd like to tell you that Wizo is in the process, and I shouldn't prejudge democracy, but in the process of possibly even becoming the chairman of the American section. At this time, your president is the front runner for the chairmanship of the American section of the World Jewish Congress in the United States.
Evelyn Sommer, otherwise I think I'm moving to the States.
Evelyn Sommer. My apologies. I'm always careful. You're right. I stand corrected. Women are effective at the UN. They speak with a clarion voice and are respected for that. Sometimes men have things to learn. I am constantly threatened in a house that has 4 women in it and only 3 men. And we're outvoted. and our house is a democracy in which women have the equal vote. I would like to tell you that with regard to Judaism, Eid Echad Ne'eman Be'isurin, according to Jewish law, one witness is accepted with regard to Isser Veheter, that applies to a woman. Your witness is accepted in Jewish courts, and with regard to Jewish law, with regard to most questions of Isser Veheter, and they are certainly accepted with regard to democracy, and if you don't speak and you're not heard, it will be your fault. Make yourselves heard, torture us, tell us what we're not doing right. You come from so many different places, maybe we haven't thought of what we should be doing in a place where you are. And if you sometimes lead us by being out ahead of us, maybe we'll catch up and follow you and take the rest of the Jewish world with us. We need some help. Help us, and then maybe I will not have flown here for nothing. Thank you.
Well, Israel, by the applause, you can understand how much they admired you. You've really made our conference this morning. You've made our day. And I can't express enough gratitude to you. But now you will have a problem, because some time ago I received a letter saying that you are calling an assembly of the World Jewish Congress in Jerusalem. And you also asked for, would I suggest some problem to be brought up or taken up? And I promptly replied that as you were very successful in taking up Soviet Jewry with the result that we know, I suggest now you should call a conference to how to fight anti-Semitism, because this is the next thing that we see in front of us as a terrible danger in Europe and all over the world. And I hope that you will see to it that this point is discussed at the Assembly in February.
Your letter has not only been noted,
okay,
but it is a plenary session as a result of it.
Okay,
I'm afraid
fine.
you'll be chairing it.
But you still don't know what's your problem. Wait a minute.
I'm afraid you'll be chairing it.
Considering that he flew the whole night and gave us such a fantastic speech, can you imagine what would have happened if he would have come rested? He still doesn't know what's his problem. I haven't said it yet. Israel, you asked me who will attend your assembly. First of all, I didn't read out to you the countries represented in this hall: England, France, Israel, Italy, Belgium, Holland, Spain, Sweden, Venezuela, Denmark, Austria, Norway, Germany, Austria, twice Austria, in spite of Waldheim, whom I can't stand, Budapest, Prague, and Romania. Now the problem will be really how many delegates will we have to your assembly. That will be your problem. Now I'm putting it to you. I hope that you will come. I don't remember exactly how many we were at your last assembly, but I do hope that you will give us the right to bring from every continent delegates from large federations or small federations, and as soon as we know that, we will inform our colleagues abroad to come to Jerusalem to attend your assembly.
May I respond to that?
Absolutely. My problem is only we are a little bit, no, immediately. We have, now wait a minute, we have a plenary session in January. It will be very difficult to persuade our colleagues to come again in February, but they will come. You said before that we are disciplined and that we are supportive and that we are cooperative and we are strong and we are powerful. I heard every word of it. I registered it. So now it's your problem how many will come to your conference. And we wish you really a great assembly. I must know in advance that Bronfman is re-elected, otherwise I don't come, you know it. Yes, my vote and our vote, right? Because I'm a big admirer of his, and don't you dare think of changing any position. So please, Dr. Singer, you want to answer?
With respect to the assembly, for those of you, I would appreciate if I'm not quoted on this point. In fact, I'm not going to name the community. There was a an important community in the United States that had a delegation of 1,492 people that was going to Israel. And of the 1,492 that were supposed to go, 2 went. Now, it was for this reason that we have tried to make sure that we get the best possible response from the communities, and more importantly, from those important organizations associated with the World Jewish Congress. This will be a test. Every one of the meetings, your meeting, our meeting, there aren't enough meetings, unfortunately. And there aren't enough meetings that show solidarity with Israel at this point. Every single person that can come as often as they can, and I'm coming as often as I can, looking for every excuse just to prove, even for a day, that Israel is a place that one shouldn't be afraid to go to, will be an expression of solidarity with Israel. I'm sending my kids to Israel in intercession to show people that if I'm willing to endanger my kids, I certainly would endanger myself, and I think that that's an expression that other people should in some way show as well. This is a critical period. Certainly the next month and a half, it's one in which every person has to really look at themselves and look at the numbers of persons in the hotels in Jerusalem and decide whether they're going to fill those up or not. And my answer to you is, whatever the voting key is going to be is something which you are going to decide in the executive, and I'm not going to decide this myself. But if Wizo comes with a massive delegation, the voting key will be skewed to take that into consideration.
Thank you very much. Ladies, it was a wonderful morning, but I have to thank one more person. I see here on my right standing Maram Stern, representative of World Jewish Congress in Europe. I can't thank you enough for your help extended to us in Prague when we came to reorganize Wizo. I saw you only this minute, otherwise I would have thanked you before. You were our angel there, taking care of us, looking after us, taking us to the Vice Prime Minister, taking us to another minister, doing an outstanding job. And it is thanks to you very much that we have here the president of Wizo Prague. And you were really there to support us all the way. Thank you very, very much. Ladies, we shall have the pleasure of seeing Dr. Singer and Leslie Keller tonight at the reception which they're giving in our honor. That's why he said yesterday I'm stingy, because I wanted them to pay for it and not us. I understand. Anyhow, we're looking forward very much to the reception and the Jewish community. And now we all deserve lunch. Israel, I cannot thank you enough for coming here and addressing us in Israel. Such a brilliant speech. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I didn't show you. Sorry.
És tanúságot tesz erről a szándékáról minden lehető alkalommal.
I can say to you calmly, without any hesitation, that the Republic of Hungary does carry through the process of democratization. And in fact, by virtue of every piece of legislation, provision of law,
Miniszterelnöke, Antal József, aki olyan családi házból jött, amelynek családfőjénél többet talán senki nem tett a magyar zsidóság megmentéséért.
As a matter of fact, from home, the head of which was very well known and renowned about his contribution to saving breast-cancer lives of many Jewish people, and perhaps nobody has ever done anything more than he did in his life to help and save Jewish people.
Szavai éppen úgy irányadó a Dunaparti emlékművet, Andrásfalvi művelődési miniszterét, amikor annak a
for the Minister of Culture and Education, Mr. Andrásfalvi, who actually took the initiative for the building and inauguration of that monument.
És ezek a megnyilatkozások másokéval, névtelenekével Csendesebbek ugyan, mint egy-két hangoskodói, vagy a sötétben náci szimbólumokat mázolóké.
Well, I think that these statements, after abandoned Jewish cemeteries and rehabilitate those and who initiate the construction and inauguration of various monuments and the proper formula of commemoration.
Hogy lakhelyet, netán hazát váltson, amire azonban a magyarországi zsidóság, hogy ilyen országban köszöntsem önöket tisztelettel, azzal a tisztelettel, amit szervezetük nagyon is megérdemel, azért a hősi munkáért, amivel működése alatt
So let me finish my speech by saying that I would like to greet you, salute you with the respect that is due to your organization because it deserves it for the tremendously important, significant activities that it's always carried out. And in every country, no matter where you go, your organization and your efforts always deserve this support and salutation. And may I, at the end, welcome you and wish you a successful conference in this spirit. Thank you very much.
Here are people, children, villages, youth clubs, everything we do in Israel. And on the other side is the emblem of mother and child. Somebody must have put it in the so that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
Now, before I shall ask our ambassador to address us, let me tell you, ladies, I know that those of us from Israel, England, French-speaking countries, Spanish-speaking countries did not understand every word of Hungarian, but we had a very good translator. So you have to get used to it, because next time we may be in Czechoslovakia or in Romania, Yugoslavia. When I have patience and get used to it. I would like to welcome here two gentlemen whom I didn't have the pleasure to do before. Mr. Lajos Bakos, who is the Deputy Chairman of World Jewish Congress in Budapest. And at the head table, we have here the representative of the Hungarian Zionist organization, Mr. Joseph Young, who will also address us in a few minutes. Now what shall I tell our ambassador? First of all, Kvod HaShagrir Baruch Haba. Shehiyanu v'Higavnu lezman hazeh. When we met 9 months ago, and I was telling you that Wizo is coming here and maybe holding a conference, you didn't believe it, I didn't believe it, none of us believed it, but we were dreaming about it. And here we are delivering you the baby. 9 months, exactly. Mr. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. מה שנשאר מקהילה הזאת, ואני בטוח שתוכלו ליצור קשר אמיץ עם חברות ויצו במדינה הזאת. ואני חושב שמשימה חשובה בשבילכם, כי יהדות זו הייתה מנותקת מישראל במשך 40 שנה, וכל קשר אנושי múltját, és remélem bizonyos mértékig jelenét is. Én igen nagy fontosságnak tartom azt a tényt, hogy itt Magyarországon a politikai változások után, amit ebben az országban történtek az elmúlt 2 évben, és főleg az utolsó pár hónapban lehetővé vált, hogy egy cionista to English, and with your permission, I will start with some can hear from at the age of the Zionist youth movement here in Hungary, I went to a Hachshara, if you know what I mean, and it was next to this building, here, opposite of the independent Jewish state. You will understand that a special satisfaction for me to welcome you here in this town and in this place. As the ambassador of Israel, let me tell you that as any Israeli ambassador in any country of the world, we have 2 major tasks. First of all, we have to work for the improvement and development of the relations between the two countries and the two peoples. I think, without trying to brag, that during the last 2 years, 2.5 years that we are here, a lot of things happened between the two countries, and I hope that this positive development will go on in the coming months and years too. Not less important for any Israeli ambassador is to keep the contact with the Jewish communities in a certain country. I hope that the Jewish community here in Hungary, mainly in Budapest, can give its witnessing on our good relations with them and can prove that we did and we are going to do our best that this Jewish community that was not connected in Israel during the last 40 years now will be able to develop these relations, to visit Israel, to send their children to study and to get the atmosphere of the country. Again, thanks for the Hungarian government and for everybody else who helped in our work. So, with this background, I wish you the best for your Congress, and I hope that you'll enjoy your stay in Hungary, and hope that after this first Zionist Congress, there will be other opportunities that we will be able to welcome a World Jewish gathering in Islam. Thank you very much.
Miért veszik alapját a pénzügyminiszter? A sajtó az MDF és az SDS szemszögéből. Olcsó hús hígilé nélkül. Tigris kilakoltatás Nyergesújfalun. Jó estét kívánok, kedves nézőink! A 20. század legtovább hívott tartja kongresszusát. A tanácskozást, amint egy fél évvel ezelőtt megalakult magyar szervezet hívta össze.
Gondoskodunk a gyerekekről, ápoljuk az időseket, erősítjük az összetartozás érzését a világ zsidósága és Izrael állam között. És tesszük mindezt nem egy politikai szervezet keretei között, hanem önkéntes alapon. Hallom Raja Jaglom elnökasszonytól, aki megnyitó beszédében Izrael magyarországi nagykövetéhez fordulva így szólt. Amikor 9 hónappal ezelőtt Shlomo Maromúrral a konferencia helyszínéről tárgyaltunk, még egyikünk sem gondolta, hogy a bébi, vagyis az európai találkozó valóban Budapesten látja meg a napvilágot. Itt, ahol a demokrácia erői felülkerekedőben vannak, mondta Szabad György, de ahol rövid idő alatt még nem várható el az antiszemitizmus évszázados előítéletének felszámolása, hiszen ez még a 200 éves demokráciáknak sem sikerült teljesen.
Semmiféleképpen semmilyen cionista propagandát nem kívánunk folytatni.
Ezt már Hán Veronika jelentette ki a Magyarországi Szövetség mintegy 100 hölgytagjának nevében. Ők a zsidó hagyományok ápolása és az identitástudat erősítése mellett fontosnak tartják leszögezni.
Elő vagyunk magyarok, és mondjuk azután zsidók, ezt szeretnénk tisztázni.
Akik a Pető Intézet kisbetegeinek támogatását, a szovjet kivándorlók megsegítését is felvállalják, szeretett szolgálatuk feladataként.
Nem tudom, a nézők közül hányan tartanak otthon